All right, I'm Guy Thompson. I'll be talking about my wife of 37 years. Also, September 7th of last year. I lost my brother August the 25th, and then my wife on the 7th of September.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Tyrone Brown, and I lost my daughter almost 2 years ago, February. And that's the reason why I want to speak on it, because I know a lot of men are suffering like I did.
Okay, for me, my wife passed February 13th. I always think it's interesting. February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, uh, this year, 2022. That will be, that was my main grief.
Anybody can jump in as you want. I won't call in any particular order. So if you're wanting to jump in, you can jump in. So when first of all, who came up with this topic? Because it's an amazing topic. I can't take credit for it. Okay, Tyrone, you're
Tyrone
amazing.
called me about it.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to Mike when I saw y'all podcast. I forgot exactly what y'all speaking on, but I was real impressed about the professionalism and how you asked the questions. Mike was right on key, and I had already thought about. I talked to Mike about doing a men's meeting on suffering, men suffering, and so this is how that came about. I spoke to him, and he got in touch with you, and this today is where we are. And I like to appreciate you for giving us this opportunity to speak.
I'm just humbled that you guys are open to talk about such a delicate topic, because we really, honestly, as a society, when women grieve, it's a lot different than men, because when little boys are taught not to cry. So even with men and grief, it's such a unique topic. How do men grieve? So let's start with that. Like, early on, were you ever taught to grieve?
I think it's going to differ a little bit from person to person.
Yeah.
I don't specifically like to. I like to keep people in my mind from getting stuck on the idea that all men do the same thing, that it's men and women. But there are going to be similarities. But as far as how we were taught, it just depends on, what kind of environment you came up in. But I think in general, where a lot of us came up, it was whether it was spoken or not, it's kind of an unspoken rule that you're just supposed to be strong, whatever that means.
Yeah. It was kind of taboo for me. All boys grew up in a family where it was all boys. 5 boys grew up in the house together, and all of us was something, I guess you can say it. And growing up, just always just even just dealing with it. You deal with it. You don't cry. You just you move on. What's strange to me, to get older and married and be with someone a lot of years, you find out that you grieve. You grieve hard because you grew up tough. Kind of, like I say, all boys, and we all just, everybody did their thing. And we didn't complain when stuff happened. Things happen, especially hard things. You didn't cry. You kind of went your way and you kind of just did it. What's different for me now, losing a wife of 37 years, being a man, wow, and seeing my life. I do a ministry called Through It All. Came alive for me. Alive. That statement, that phrase, through it all, came alive. And where I used to wouldn't think that you didn't talk about it, you didn't say anything about it, I found out that you really need to talk about it. We cried, we hurt.
Yeah, I think a lot of us suffer in silence. When I went through, I thought like God just got through saying, you thought, you would think you had to be strong. That's where we came, because we came up pretty much in the same neighborhood area.
Yeah.
And it's always about, being strong and being, and what that means at this point in my life, I don't even really know. But for me, it was that whole thing. And then my body told me where I was at. I was felt like I saw bugs itching and scratching and just different things because I wouldn't let it out emotionally. And so I suffered that way. And that I had to, after talking to my nurse, because I'm on dialysis too, and telling her things I was going through, she suggested that I go get some therapy. And that's where I opened everything up for me. And now that's why I want to suggest that, being immediately after the funeral and all this other stuff, do go get therapy, even just one time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, can you elaborate? So you talk about men seeking therapy. How can therapy help men versus not seeking therapy?
My wife was talk about therapy, talk about different things, and you have those different conversations. No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
When I found out when I lost my wife, I needed to talk about it. I needed someone to talk to. She's been there all this time, and I want to talk to another minister or another person. What I've learned, get help, talk to someone.
Yeah.
Another preacher. I'm a minister. Why would I listen now? But now I was just talk to someone.
I had come to understand therapy in a different way, but at this point in my life. And one thing I did not realize is that there are so many issues you have wrapped up in an individual that you don't know that you have. There are dependencies that are not material and they are not overt, but they are quietly psychological. And so there are things that you feel and there's an emptiness. But I had come to understand therapy a little bit different than most people because I had dealt with doing counseling. And I had kind of taken the stigma off of it. I believe that anything that you don't talk about is going to manifest somewhere. If you don't get it out, it's coming out, which is kind of what Tyrone was saying. He is manifested in his body. And I believe that's true for anybody. I think that a lot of people are sick. And mental health has a lot of effect on physical health. They were saying the Mayo Clinic said that at least 70% of all illness is basically psychosomatic. Not that it's all in your mind and it stays there, but it starts in the mind and then affects everything else. So my ministry really is all about talking about things, as you know. Sometimes
I know.
It's all about talking about it and getting it out.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jump back to Guy. So, Guy, you spoke about losing your wife and your brother at the same time. How did you process both in such a close time frame?
It was a blow because when you opened up and you talked about how you come to a place where you think you boys, you grow up and you don't talk about it, you cover it up, you hide it. In losing my brother and my wife, somebody that I was close with we had 3 children, and we'd already dealt with death with losing a child, and it was just so devastating to the point where you go through life and you deal with all the things that married couples deal with, and now that person isn't there anymore. I was about to just blow my mind. I mean, just used to, and I remember the talks that we used to have about just going to therapy about different things, whether it be marriage or about sickness that we've always dealt with. And we held it here. We don't talk about it. We talk about it here. But when I found out when I lost the one who I had those conversations, because we grew up together. We were 19 years old when we first got married. We were kids. And so all of a sudden now she's gone. And those conversations, I wished I hadn't talked about it. That's why when Mike asked me about just coming to this, talking on this, you have to talk and have to bring it out. There have to be some type of therapy whether it be physical or and I'm with Tyrone. It can come physically, it can come mentally, but I think what happens is that you have to talk about it. I came to a point when I lost both of them. I got to talk about it with my children. Somebody's got to hear where I am.
How do you balance life while still managing grief? Life still goes on. You still have to be productive. You still got to go grocery shopping. You still got to get oil changes or whatever, go doctor's appointment. How do you continue to move forward while dealing with grief?
I learn as I go. When Mike called and would text me and I found out that his wife had passed, I started focusing more on looking at my wife in a way that I've always loved her and she knows that, but we don't have time to be messing around for us. Look, petty things, and we looking at each other and arguing about stuff about this and that. And now I'm learning to just be calm about a lot of things now, and take her all in and take everything about her in, because I told her one day, and it hurt me to say this, one day we won't be together, and it won't be because we divorced or anything like that. Death is gonna happen. And that's just the way it is. So let's make the most of it, our time with each other, and stop bickering about all the little bitty things. I mean, I'm not saying but married couples will do certain things that, and so we have to be real about where we are, and that we don't have a whole lot of time that we think we do. We just never know.
That's my biggest advice to people now, to married couples. I tell all of anybody, young ones, old ones, y'all better enjoy each other now. Stop whatever is going on. Stop whatever and enjoy each other, because you don't know. Because that, what Tyrone just said, is coming.
Yeah. Well, and the way that I move, I realize it's the first thing I have to understand and remind myself of is I allow myself to have my pity party. Okay. And to cry about it. And then I realize I'm willing to let it be so, which means that at a certain point, I realize, okay, you can't undo it. Now you have to go on. But I do believe it's necessary that, and this is how I keep going. I have my times where I realize it is what it is. I process all of my thoughts, the guilt of thinking you should have been able to save the person. You naturally, and I don't know where these thoughts come from, but I think that as a man, you naturally think back about how you should have been able to protect them from something you couldn't even protect them from, or what you could have done differently, which kind of leads into why it's important to go on and not do, not waste time on petty things now. But I do think we have to all go back and process even the stuff that, like somebody could shut you down if you say, well, I wish I had done this. Well, ain't no point in thinking about that. Well, I think for a certain amount of time, you do have to think about it. You have to take at least somebody you have to talk to about, this is what I feel. Right. I'm not saying I could have done anything, but I do need to get out that I feel like I should have been able to save, especially when you're talking about somebody being in ministry. It's almost like what they told Jesus on the cross. The man said he saved others, himself he cannot save. It's like, I've helped all kinds of other people. Why couldn't I have fixed this? Or what could I have done to fix it? And you have to talk about that with somebody who understands that I'm just talking now. That's where the therapy comes in. Somebody that understands that it's important to get the thoughts out, because you won't get past them until you get them out.
I absolutely believe that. You have to talk about it, because you constantly go back in what you could have did, wanted to do, and you think about everything said and what wasn't said. I was fortunate enough to be with her till she took her last breath, and I still think, what could I have done? But getting up every day, living the best life that I know she would want me to live. I remember that. I went to yesterday and enjoyed my grandson. I know those are things that she loved to do, enjoy the children. I get a chance to do more of that than I ever did. I look at things that I knew that makes her feel good. I get up and just move and do it. Thank God for every moment. And knowing that we had the time that we had together. It's hard. Been a year and a few days now. Tears still come. And I thank God for every moment. I just get up and keep going.
I had a guest last week. Her name is Brandy. She kind of talked about losing her husband. And one of the unique things she said, she talked about grief coming in waves. I think she said like a DMV thing for him to renew his tags came. And she got mad all over, like, why would they send this thing in his name? And it showed me like grief doesn't look like we think it's gonna look. It can look like them sending you a bill in their person's name. Now you irritated and you going off, but it's not that you're going off because you're upset at the bill. It's like, why would it's like it's a weight of grieving. What are some ways that you grieve that people wouldn't think, oh, grief looks like that?
For me, mostly it's, well, this is the part I think that people don't see. When there's something for me that happens, and I think about picking up the phone to call, because she would be my person to tell. Or getting ready to travel. One of the things that I'm going to challenge myself to do is to go by myself. I haven't done that in 20 years. I barely even drove most of the time. You may know that.
I know.
Yeah.
Look, I'm gonna tell y'all because I knew Miss Mel. If you don't mind me, talking about it.
Go ahead.
Mrs. Mel, she was a hot mess, a beautiful hot mess. That lady, she didn't let Miss Michael because she was, she drove a certain speed. So she's like, oh no, I'm gonna drive. Like you just to know her was to love her. So he wasn't gonna drive.
No. We decided that a long time ago, if you're gonna drive from the passenger seat, we might as well switch seats.
Yeah.
That was her.
And that's what we did long time ago. But to be able now to have to go, there's literally a fear. And fear, guilt. I don't even know how to describe all the feelings that come up with me. I'm thinking about going on a trip very soon down to Georgia. But it's tough to go because I'm feeling a certain way. And I have to have faith that understand the feeling is not going to stay. That's the good thing about it coming in waves. You have to know it doesn't last forever. It's going to come, but it comes to pass.
Right.
And if I didn't have the faith that it would come to pass, it would be a real problem. But I understand that like the feeling I may feel now is not going to stay all day long today. Thank God.
Yeah.
It'll come and then they go. So for me, that knowing that they'll come and go, I don't know how anybody else grieves, but those are the things that I think about when I think about going somewhere or going to a movie or traveling. And I'm reminded that sometimes even upset that I got to make a decision because of how controlling she was. Like these psychological dependencies you didn't think you had. I was used to her making the decisions.
I know her. When you know somebody, it's like
she would make the decision, so I didn't have to. Now I've got to make decisions.
I'm sorry for laughing because I know how she is. So
and I almost want to get upset with it. See, now you left me to make, and now I got to decide where to go eat.
For me, it's my granddaughter, Kenya. So my Facebook page is my daughter's picture. She was messing with my phone and she looked at the picture. She said, "You miss her, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I asked her the same question. She just turned and walked away. That brings up her through other people a lot of times, especially the kids.
That's a good point. Kids and grief. How do you guys go through your grief and still support the children in your family with dealing with theirs as well?
Ooh. Oh man.
Because you guys are going through your own grief.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about how, you know, you were taught to be strong and people are men, and, you know, not even just men, but just historically being taught, oh, you got to be strong.
Yeah.
Because even as a woman, I've heard you just got to be strong. And we're not taught to be vulnerable. So not only having to go through your own storm, but having to communicate that with children. How do you do that?
That piece was a major piece for me. My daughter has been really stronger. Her mother would be so proud of her.
Yeah, she wrote an amazing book too, by the way. Y'all should read.
What's the name of the book?
Why Not Me? It's amazing. It's about strength and encouraging. She wrote that a year before my wife passed. And Lord, my daughter, she still today goes to the cemetery after dialysis every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. She still go. But she has a strength other than it's helped me. She's been more encouraging to me to show me that I got to, continue to be strong. And we didn't think. Kim was so close to her to the point where, you see, when they that close, you wonder. But she has really stood up and just been strong for me and encouraging to me. She's always asking me. He's even gotten better, a strength that is encouraging too, to help me. And I say help me, you would think I still have to help them. I'm the dad. I'm supposed to be the one that's strong. And it's so encouraging to me. It's just been a blessing. Like I do ministry, like I said, called Through It All. Lord, that statement just comes alive from the children, from people that know about us. Mm-hmm. Everything we've been through, God has been there for us. The children's been there for me, and I guess I've been there for them.
My daughter, I'll say this, I got a lot of grandkids. When they first found out, a set of them came over and said, let's go over and cheer Grandpapa up. And that's important to me, that we're teaching them it ain't all about you. Sometimes we have to give in to loving other people and showing them specifically what they mean to you. My daughter that passed, Nicole, was a child that loved her father. She could tell you. And I was so proud of her, because I'm proud of what I like to think that I had a part of raising is just a good person. And so that within itself gives me a lot of encouragement that I was on the right track. And you couldn't tell anything about her dad.
And how old was Nicole at her time of passing?
37.
What is your definition of being a good father?
Your intentions. My intentions have always been good for my children. And I can walk away now, I think my wife and I are the matriarchs of our family at this point. And I do a lot of things because not necessarily for me, but I try to be the example for them. And I go a little further than sometimes my wife. You're like, oh, you shouldn't sometimes do this or that. But I want them to understand what it means to be a father, what it means to have a man in your life that loves you and care about you. And because I tell all my girls they're beautiful, especially the brown ones. I make sure, because our society has a way of making them feel like they're less. So I've always told them that they're beautiful. They deserve all. And I try to be the example as a man for them. One of my daughters tripping at one time about me opening the doors and for my wife. She didn't require that at the time, but now she wish she had it. And she see how important that is to show that kind of kindness to your wife or the person that you're dating or whoever else. But yeah, I try to be the example all the way around as much as I possibly can.
Did any of you, before the passing of your daughter or your wife or brother, did any of you have discussions surrounding death? And if so, how did those discussions look?
We really kind of skirted the subject. As far as me and my wife, we just kind of skirted the subject. There was no direct conversation about if I go, we mostly talked about what she talked about was how she didn't want what conditions she didn't want to live under. But we never really directly talked about her leaving.
My wife came. We had a conversation about maybe a week, maybe a month before. She told me, and my wife was a nurse by profession. She made a statement to me. Do all it come down to it. Do all you can do. Now my wife's a nurse. She's worked on teams where they come in and they do the shock and all that. She knew what would happen. But she made a statement for me to do all I can do to save her. She knew I couldn't because I didn't have that profession. I didn't, She made that statement, and I was there when she passed. And, all I could do is allow them to do what she knew would happen if it came down to her stop breathing. Mm-hmm. It was like the largest man in the world came in there and was doing the work. But I remember that conversation just like it was me and you talking now. He said that till I told him to stop.
One of the things that I believe, now this is going forward, I think that we have to realize this. The purpose of grieving is not to stay there. See, that's wide, and that's one thing I want to make clear. I don't want to leave off the fact that all that we've been taught about being strong, it is important. But a part of being strong is grieving. You have to be strong enough to grieve, to cry, to show the emotion, and to let it out. I think it's a lot of what they call being strong is weakness because people are afraid of how they'll be perceived. It takes strength to cry and then move on. We have to decide that we're going to go forward. I do also think that there is something that takes place during a transition that none of us will understand until we transition. That they reach a point where they see something that we don't see. And just like Kim said, do all you can to keep me here. Well, you'll say that as long as here is all you see. I've done a lot of studying on, they call them NDEers, near-death experiences, and the ones who left and came back, and all of them describe it basically the same way. And I've talked to a lot of people lately about watching people as they transition and the things that they say as they're going. And I believe, and this gives me a hope and something, even though I miss her, to hold on to, that they see something better. Being in ministry, I also have to take into account all these Christians. We always talk about going to a better place, but we don't ever want anybody to leave. Yeah, and I just believe, because the two most significant deaths I've seen was my wife and my father to this point. I kind of believe at that point of transition, they both made their choice. Not that they wouldn't have stayed had they been able to be healthy, but having to choose between the things they were dealing with and the other side, once they saw the other side, I think they decided to cross over. And I like to believe that they're really saying to me, now you think I'm struggling. No, they said, no, you're the one that still got the struggle.
I believe that.
You're the one that still has a struggle. Yeah. We got the struggle down here. And so I want to be an example. The pain is a part of growth. I challenge myself to go towards it instead of away from it.
Walk in it.
How do you guys continue to have faith despite all that you've been through?
Because I just believe in him. Grieving death, I think it makes me a better minister. To help people and to encourage people. You can't tell them how they gonna feel or what they feel, but you can be there. A lot of times we think going and saying a whole lot is something. Sometimes it's just going and just praying and just being there.
The only way you could be delivered from this pain, all three of us are talking about, is through God. I would not have been able to continue with, I can believe, now I know. I used to talk about people that commit suicide and all this other stuff. You know, I was never at that point where you talk about actually doing it, but I can see how I could be more empathetic with people that has made that decision or even thought about making a decision, because sometimes if you don't have God in your life and he's not guiding you, then you can do almost anything. But to have him in your life, you can get over anything. That's the only person that has liberated me from this pain that I suffered.
It is definitely our faith and a mission. Like I said, I'm challenging myself right now to make some decisions today to do some things, and while experiencing a whole lot of what might be considered anxiety, almost pain, really. Some decisions are almost physically painful. But like Tyrone said, it helps me to understand other people. It helps with your empathy. You know, we got to challenge you to keep going. I was saying to someone the other day, everybody needs somebody who can do two things, I believe. Understand what your challenge is, but still not allow you to compromise on what you can do about it. And what we run into mostly is either people who are too sympathetic or those who are not empathizing and don't understand at all, who just say, all it is this. Now, I apply that to everything in life now. When I hear people, somebody's doing a job and somebody comes on social media, man, they need to be fired. They need to do this to them. No, you got to put yourself in their shoe. I'm not saying something shouldn't be done, but I do believe we should always try to put ourselves in the person's shoes first and then say, okay, now how do we process it? Because that's the only way you can help. We want to bring you out, but it ain't as simple as saying, oh, man up. It's not quite that simple. You don't know how much they're manning up already.
It seems like you have a pretty good support system of people who have went through the same thing that you've went through, as far as losing a significant other and helping each other with dealing with their grief. How would a person go about finding a support group if they're going through a similar grief of losing a husband or a wife or a child?
First, you got to be willing to talk. I know Tyrone was interested. Guy hasn't ministered through it all, first of all. Every fourth. And he's done something that's been very unique, because as a minister, to start a ministry, but every fourth Sunday, he brings in a minister. He just opens his platform. Tyrone, and I don't know how far, because of whether the people have kept commitments, has mentioned to me about starting a men's group where the men can actually sit and meet and talk about different things. I do ministry have been doing for 30 years. We always talk. Guy comes now and shares with me on Tuesday nights. I always teach with an open forum. The main thing I would say to anybody is this: they've got to be willing to open up. There are avenues. They have to be. That's one of the things I think Tyrone wanted to accomplish by asking for this platform. I was shut down, and somebody opening up to me helped me to open up. And the whole point was he's saying, I want to see men open up. You can't find help if you won't open. Yeah, so I don't know. Well, specifically, there's a lot of different things. Like I said, I've got a ministry. God does one. It's a lot of times ministry just the people that you talk to, or Tyrone just having regular conversations with people. It can be guided, but you've got to want it.
I was with Mike when he started this ministry 30 years ago. It was so important that I enjoyed it, but I knew God had a calling on my life as well. So I've done some other things. When this happened, I knew I had to change some things in my life. I did not believe in, as I said before, in therapy or talking about it to other ministers. And what I think we all have in common, we lost somebody. We all need to talk about it. The children, the men, the different circumstances, they come up and they're real. This is important to me. where I used to wouldn't say, nah, I'm a minister, I don't need to do that. Believers, even non-believers need counseling to talk about. Because this, I think, draws people to those statements of taking their life, not doing or not being. Opportunities there where I, for far as me, going back to Mike has been a therapy. Going to Mike, visiting him on every Tuesday has been a therapy for me. And I know this has been a therapy for me right now. As you see, I still break down.
A lot of young men don't have mentors or are being mentored by the wrong type of people. So they feel like, I got to be tough. I got to be hard. I ain't going to show no love, this, that, any other. Having a village of men who say it is okay to be vulnerable. I got your back. I'm going to hold you accountable. I want to see you grow. I want to see you get married. I want to see you thrive, and I want to see you do well. And if you're hurting, I'm going to be there for you. Is so important, because so many people think, well, nobody cares, so I have to put on this mask and act like I don't care, because that's part of being a man. So even defining what it means to be a man,
we have to redefine what toughness and strength is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the stuff that people are calling tough and strong is not.
Right.
It's not. It takes strength to actually open up and go through it. And keep going every day and be productive, not to just get mad and act like it didn't happen. They need to understand the difference.
And when they go through it, that you can get up.
And how to properly execute, because I know that's what's missing. And a lot of kids, even kids want it. Yeah. And I was telling someone, I said, I know we're going off the rails, so I'm gonna ask you one more question, but I have to. It's on my spirit to say this. So little kids want mentorship. Even little kids, even though I was telling someone, you see little kids joining gangs. I said, essentially, they're looking at gang leaders as mentors.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you this. I coached for years in the community centers. Some of my roughest kids, but some of the ones that have been out there, they look for somebody to tell them yes or no.
Yes, they do.
They look for somebody, and when you tell them no, or you make them act according, or be a certain way, not a certain way that to the point where you singling them out, but you just hold them accountable. They respect you. They'll invite a better way. Invite what's right. Some of you think would be the baddest or roughest. The other day, called me. It's been years since I coached. They come in the store when I was in the stores, and they see me, Coach Guy. After all these years, Coach Guy, and that makes me feel good. When I tell my children, I'm gonna be quiet. When I tell other married couples and people, fathers, God will let you see your blessing if you be a blessing and do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
You see your blessing. Tyrone, you saw your blessing. 30 seconds, God bless you.
Right.
Blessing. He'll let you, Mike, you see your children grow up. You see what they can be. My daughter was sick. Mike, you saw when she was at her sickest. But look what she's done.
Yeah, I need y'all back on the show. We're going to wrap this thing on up, but they will be back on the show to talk about being a man, because I think to even open up and to grieve well, you have to have a network of centered men to even support you in doing so.
Right.
Because if you have somebody, are you a man? Why are you crying?
At some point, you got to have somebody bold enough to say, I'm going to grieve whether you like it or not. That's the strength. We're all men enough to say, hey, once we decide we're going to get ours out, there's some people around who probably would say something different.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Being a man, say, hey, I'm going to get mine out.
Right.
And that's what we find in common. If you don't have the courage to get yours out, then that's your problem. We're going to get ours out.
You want to be free, you want to be really, and like you said, getting it out and then letting it go. So that's where I'm at today.
Did you guys have any commentary before we end this live, whether it be plugging in your church, plugging in any upcoming events, or just any general advice you'd like to give?
Just for those of you all that might want to come, might want to see, every fourth Sunday we here at Friendship, 1685 Harrison. Tomorrow I will have Raina He's gonna be the speaker for the evening. God is just gifting me. I just let God do what He's doing. Just through it all is something to me. Everybody's through it all, not the same, but through it all, I believe He's there. God is there.
Mike and all the people that really know me, I know I love Black history, but I've gotten more into Black biblical history. A lot of times we don't know where we are in the Bible, and we let other people tell us who we are as a people. But there's a lot of things that we need to know as African Americans or Black, whoever you want to call yourself. We need to know more about ourselves. Everybody else know about themselves, and we need to know more about ourselves biblically.
I'm about to have you, Tyrone, 1/4 Sunday.
All right. Let me know in advance.
Most definitely, yes.
Well, we'll be on Word Awakening Ministries is at 8:58 airs. We'll be there tomorrow morning, 8:30 to probably about 10:30 for a teaching session. We'll also be streaming live. Find the live stream by looking us up, Word Awakening, Facebook. And if you scroll down, there's a link in the information section where the address is at the link that if you click on the link, it'll take you to Word Awakening live stream, or you can Google Word Awakening live stream beginning at 8:30 in the morning, and then you can pick us up live. We'll also have a phone line open for text for questions, because we always have lines open when we teach. That'll be every Sunday. We do a conference call on Mondays, and then Tuesday night at 7 we'll live stream again. And so if you're interested, find us on Facebook, and we'll get the information to you. Reach out to us.
Okay. Thank you guys for being on the show. You guys have an amazing rest of your day. And thank you for tuning in to Dear Shamika, the podcast.